Maybe we can sing a song. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I am solid, I am free, I am solid, I am free. In the ultimate I dwell, in the ultimate I dwell. Okay, we'll listen to a sound of the bell. Dear friends, so in Plum Village we have cultivated the capacity to live in harmony. And harmony is not necessarily a quality that we hear about in the news. We hear about people promoting democracy, people promoting business, promoting many kinds of ideologies in the world. But I can't remember the last time I looked at a newspaper or a news website and I learned about a country that was living in harmony, or a city where people were living in harmony. Somehow it's not very newsworthy. But the lived experience of being in harmony, in a harmonious family, in a harmonious community is very wonderful. And I think it should be at the top of the news. Imagine if you open the newspaper and you could read about, at the very top, about a community that was living in harmony, where people were listening to one another, and people are smiling at one another every day. People are sharing their material resources with each other. People are discussing ideas with each other, coming to a consensus. Imagine at the top of the New York Times, community in Iowa living in harmony, or community in Mississippi sitting down and listening to one another once a week. Imagine. So that is the kind of beloved community that we are trying to promote here in Plum Village. Because actually we don't have enough space to have everyone come here. We would love to have more and more people come to Plum Village, not just for 4 weeks in the summer. We have other retreats throughout the year, but now somehow every time we open our doors, there's not enough space. And so this talk is dedicated to all of us here in this room, to finding ways to really bring harmony to our family and to our own communities. What can we concretely do in order to build this kind of brotherhood and sisterhood so that it is available in our home, is available in our towns, so that we can live like we're living in Plum Village everywhere. Imagine that. Imagine if Plum Village was everywhere. You don't have to get on a plane. It's not very ecological to have to get on a plane or a train to come here. Yeah. But if this kind of harmony, this kind of joy of living together, if we could find it everywhere, we wouldn't need to get on a plane to come to Plum Village. Maybe you can come once in your life. You can say, okay, one time in my life I will come to Plum Village. But I enjoy so much being in my hometown. I enjoy so much being in my home community, on my city block, with my neighbors. I enjoy so much being with my family. I don't need to come to Plum Village every summer. I don't need to come to Plum Village to recharge my batteries. That's what many people say. I come back to Plum Village to recharge my batteries. Imagine if you had a battery charger in your home and it was solar powered. Yeah? So this talk is a little bit about how we can create ways to have this harmony in our families. So Sister Tan Yi shared the first day about the first 4 steps of mindful breathing, being aware of our in and our out breath, and then following the in and the out breath over time, so we maintain our concentration on the breath, and then being aware of our body and learning how to calm our body down. Just being aware of our body already brings calm. In Plum Village, we're not caught in the idea that this body is me. Sister Shan Kong shared beautifully about wrong perceptions the other day. When you look at someone and you see an elephant when they're a rhinoceros, right? Well, we do that every day with our own body. We tend to think this body is me. I am this body. But personally, I look at what I'm doing in every moment as just being a steward of this body. We are transmitted this body from our mother and our father, and by our grandparents, by numerous ancestors. They had their desires, their ambition, their suffering, their despair, and that is transmitted to us through this body. And the bodies in this room are many colors, many shapes. They come from many parts of the world. But as long as we continue to think that this body is me, we will only suffer. Because we think this earth is mine, we've created so much suffering. We dig in the earth, extract the minerals, the oil, because we think this earth is mine. So this teaching of the Buddha on seeing the non-me elements in me is very deep. And it's not something we just learn once and agree with. It's a practice to be done in every moment. This body is not me. I am not limited by this body. So maybe we can sit beautifully for a moment. We can relax our shoulders. And maybe close our eyes. Come back to our breathing. Be aware of our body. The breath coming in and out. Our body becomes calm. This body has been transmitted to me by my mother and my father. This heat, this life force, has been transmitted to me through countless generations, going back hundreds of millions of years. This inner fire and through my thinking, through my speech, through my actions, I take care of this body. But through my taking care of this body, I start to have the idea that this body is mine. And then I believe my possessions, they are also mine. My clothing, my house, my car. I start to believe that I deserve these things. When I look at the earth, I see it as a resource to be exploited, to be used for my own pleasure. All because I believe this body is me. But what if I let go of that idea? What if I just come back to my breathing? Be aware of this body. This body is going on. It's happening. Whether I believe it is me or not, I continue to breathe. I don't need a story about myself. I don't need a story about this body. Maybe the story of me, of my body, has become an obstacle, keeping me from getting directly in contact with my body and my breathing in every moment. And listen to a bell. when we come to the monastery to become a monk or a nun, we let go of our possessions. It is a way of helping us to be free of this idea that these things belong to me. And we take on the robe which comes to us from the Sangha. Many brothers have given me passed on their bell, so that I could have a bell to invite during Dhamma sharing. When I come up to give the talk, there's a brother who has prepared some hot water in a thermos that is not mine, and some tea, and there's brothers on the meditation hall team who have beautifully arranged the cushions so that we could come in and sit down. These things are all part of living in community. When we let go of our idea of a separate self, if I sit here giving a Dhamma talk and I think I'm giving a Dhamma talk, that is also a wrong perception. You see? This is an experience that we're participating in all together. We're not just the producer and the consumer. By your insight, by your practice, you're producing the Dhamma talk. When we get the insight of non-self, we see all these things. We can no longer separate the producer from the consumer, but we see that they are actually one. I'd like a little bit to look into our mind. We talk about the mind as having a mind consciousness, what we are aware of in the present moment. If there's anger, our thinking, that is all appearing on our mind consciousness. And we have a store consciousness that we don't see it directly. But in that store consciousness, we talk about seeds. Seeds of anger, fear, of compassion, of hatred, also of love. And everyone has all of these seeds. There's seeds of mindfulness, seeds also of sadness. It is like the earth. When it rains, we know that there are seeds already there under the surface, and the water, they just need the right amount of water and sunlight, and they will manifest for us to see as flowers or as weeds or as tomatoes. So when we learn to take care of our body and our mind, we become a kind of gardener. We know that these seeds are there, seeds of anger and also seeds of compassion. And if we are a skillful gardener, if we know how to take care of our mind consciousness, then we can invite the seeds like compassion to come up. To make a flower in our mind consciousness. But if we're not careful about the object of our attention, what we're paying attention to, seeds of anger can also be watered, and they can come up into mind consciousness. So anger is also a kind of flower. I like to put it as a flower. Because our emotions are a wonder, and there's a beauty in anger as well. But if we're not careful with anger, and we think, we continue to speak and act out of anger, we can create suffering for ourselves and for others. And so I learned to honor and respect the anger inside of me, my mind. To also see it as a beautiful flower. Our anger is there for a reason. It's not like we just have to get rid of our anger or get rid of our sadness. Our anger has served a purpose for our ancestors in their lives, to help protect us, to keep us alive and safe. But when we are in a situation where our life is not in danger, and we let anger overwhelm us, then the original purpose of our anger is not being honored, is not being respected. And that is where the suffering comes in. So as a gardener of our mind, we learn how to not give attention to those things that bring about seeds of anger that manifest as flowers, as plants in our mind consciousness. That is the practice of meditation. Bhavana in Sanskrit. We can translate it as a cultivation. Bhavana. It's a coming to be of something. How do you cultivate it so that you have wheat or tomatoes or squash? Bhavana, cultivation, meditation. So when we are no longer caught in our idea about ourselves as I am this person, I come from here, I look like this, so forth, then it's much easier to see that our mind, what's going on in our mind. Because we tell ourselves, I am this, I am that, then we think, I have a right to be angry with this person. And we don't see what's actually going on. We're just giving our attention to that thought, and anger is manifesting. You see? That is meditation, to actually look deeply into our mind and see what is going on. In every moment of consciousness, there are 5 factors that are always present, and these 5 we call universals are operating all the time, even when we're sleeping. The first is contact. My eye is in contact with the flower, with the orchid. And my optic nerve then sends the information through my brain, and I can say right away, flower. So very quickly, a whole series of things have happened for me to look and see these white, blue and purple photons hitting on the back of my retina, and then from that to say the word flower or orchid. Many, many things happen very, very quickly in our mind consciousness. And so the Buddha looked into these things, and many generations of practitioners of Buddhist psychology have looked into these and noticed these 5 factors. First, we need the contact. My eye coming in contact with the flower gives rise to a moment of consciousness. So the sense organ in contact with the sense object. When they come in contact, consciousness manifests. Western psychology is still very young, but it's learning a little bit from the Buddhist psychology, the practice of a few thousand years of looking into the mind. The second universal is attention. In our eye consciousness, we have the perception that we have a full range of vision. When I look around the room, I feel like I'm looking at a kind of panoramic. But in actuality, our fine vision is very tiny in the center of our gaze. We have a very refined look. So when I look at someone's face, then I see a very high-resolution image of them. And I have the perception that around them, I also have that high resolution, but in fact it's quite blurry. And most of what is there is just being produced by our mind, not by our eye. Our mind is filling in information. It's only trying to get at what is the most important bit and giving us a high resolution image. And so that is our attention. Our attention has the capacity to give a high resolution image or high resolution information about a sound, about taste, smell, touch. Wherever our attention is, then we get that is a high resolution bit of information. Actually, our mind cannot process so many things so quickly like a computer. I think somebody calculated the baud rate of our mind. Remember we used to have modems? I don't know if anybody remembers modems. You used to have to connect to the internet on a modem, and it had a baud rate, and you wanted always to get a faster baud rate. Yeah. So it's the amount of information that can be transferred. It's because our mind wants to be as efficient as possible with this body. For example, I have enough information about this platform that I can sit down safely and know that I'm not going to fall back on the ground. If I tried to do that over here, if I don't have just enough information and I sit down, then I have trouble. But because in my eye, in the periphery, I know that this is here, and maybe I feel it before I touch, so that's more information. It's just enough for me to know, to have a sense of security that there's a solid platform for me to sit on. And I don't need any more information than that. just enough. The same with our food. We can smell our food before we eat it, and that helps us to know whether the food is safe to eat. It doesn't mean that there's not some bacteria in there which can hurt us. But it's worked well enough for enough generations. Our sense of smell has helped us to avoid eating things that might be dangerous for us, and to know what is good for us to eat. So our smell is quite efficient, but it's not perfect. It's always making a rough estimation. And that area of that rough estimation is where a lot of our wrong perceptions come in. So our attention is directed whenever there's contact between a sense organ and a sense object, then we bring attention to that. We maintain our awareness in a way that there's high resolution on that particular object. And then we have a feeling. It doesn't mean, a strong feeling of sadness or something. Just very, very subtle, very quickly. When I see the orchid, there's a subtle feeling of pleasure. When we see something beautiful, there's a feeling of pleasure. I'm not overwhelmed by that pleasure, but it's very subtle. It has a kind of tone that is produced right after there's contact. I maintain attention, and then a feeling is produced. Maybe if you see a bar of chocolate and you like chocolate, right away you have a feeling of pleasure. But if you see maybe the dog pooped in the middle of the path, and you see it, and right away you have a feeling of displeasure. It's not pleasant. Or how many of us have to empty the compost toilets in Upper Hamlet this week? Anybody in here? Okay. I don't know if you were able to transform your unpleasant feeling of looking in the bin of the composting toilet. Okay, maybe. Yeah, so maybe if we imagine having to remove the human feces from the compost toilet, it's not so easy. We have lots of feelings of displeasure. So this is happening very, very quickly in every moment of consciousness. There's contact, attention, feeling. And also, when we give our attention to something, we have perceptions. Like I perceive the flower. The name flower is a perception. It means that my mind has somehow excluded other possibilities. One of the great contributions of Buddhist philosophy to the world is this concept of exclusion, apoha in Sanskrit. That our concept of something is based on the exclusion of all other possibilities. So when I look at the flower, I know it's not a cow because I can exclude it. It doesn't have the color or shape of a cow. It doesn't smell like a cow. I know it's not a bell because it has a certain shape. So my mind is actually, by perceiving something, I'm excluding other possibilities. So the very nature of perception has a nature of exclusion. Yeah. When we, this is a very important topic. A lot of our suffering around race, around sex, gender, this all comes because of this sense of exclusion. We see something, and then we see the color of someone's skin, and we see that they're a man or a woman, and we start to have all kinds of perceptions about them. We haven't met that person, we never said anything to them, and yet all of our habit energies, our perceptions from the past, our feelings of our pleasant feelings, our unpleasant feelings, they culminate in that moment. And we have a perception. I want to talk to this person. I don't want to talk to this person. This person is like that. This person is like this. So our mind starts to exclude other possibilities. Yeah, that is the nature of our mind, if we are not mindful. And so when in Plum Village we practice stopping our thinking and coming back to the present moment, that is a way of becoming free from this conceptualization, free from our judging, reacting. It's getting at the root of our biases, understanding the nature of our mind. Usually when we have a bias, we just want to replace it with another bias. That is the way of the world. But in Buddhist psychology, that is not sufficient. We want to go deeper to the root of our mind and understand what is it that is causing these perceptions. What is it in my feelings that causes that perception to manifest like that? Why do I have a feeling of fear when someone has this color skin when I'm walking along the street? And why do I not have fear if they have a different color? So this is all programmed into our evolutionary history. And but in situations which are not dangerous, where we're not fearing for our life, we continue to operate in that way. It's based in our fear. So a lot of our wrong perceptions are based in a sense of fear. This body is mine, I need to protect it. And the last of the 5 universal mental formations is volition. The Buddha said it is like a man who is being dragged into a pit of hot coals by 2 strong men. He desperately wants to live. He doesn't want to be thrown into that pit of burning coals. So volition is like that. It is our deep desire to live, to continue. And our volition is directing us in every moment. Through our volition, we give our attention to different objects. We go, maybe if we like to drink coffee every day, then we go somehow we find ourselves walking to the tea house and pressing the button on the coffee machine. And maybe we didn't even know we were doing it. Anybody recognize that? No coffee drinkers here? It just seems like it's like a kind of zombie. Just kind of... That is our volition. And through this experience of every moment of these 5 universal mental formations operating in our consciousness, our volition becomes stronger and stronger in one direction or another. We try to seek out pleasurable experiences and we try to avoid unpleasurable experiences. And our perceptions and our feelings are informing us in every moment, whether this will be pleasurable or unpleasurable. Maybe we can listen to a sound of the bell. See if you can look into our mind and see, become in contact with our breathing. Now we give our attention to our breathing. We have a pleasant feeling. And I perceive this is an in-breath, this is an out-breath. And my volition continues to direct my attention to my breathing during the whole sound of the bell. So along with these 5 universal mental formations we're very lucky to have, we call the 5 special or 5 particular mental formations. And we make good use of them here in Plum Village. They're not like the universals, they're not present in every moment of consciousness, but we can call on them in order to transform our wrong perceptions. So the first one we call desire or intention, chanda. It's our deep aspiration. For example, we come to Plum Village because of an aspiration. We want to bring more peace, more freedom, more happiness into our lives, into the life of our family. And that is a positive intention, positive desire. So we come to Plum Village. We have an aspiration to be aware of our breathing. So we bring our attention to our breathing. So the aspiration, the desire to be more free, directs our attention to the breathing. Many people want to be free, but they don't know to bring their attention to their breathing. But when we are a practitioner, we come to Plum Village, we learn that by being aware of my breath, I can be more calm, more peaceful. And we cultivate a new habit. So chanda, this desire or intention, is what helps us to stop and come back to our breathing when we're walking along the path. Maybe somebody is wanting to talk to us, and you may notice the monks and nuns, you come up to us and you start talking to us, and then we stop. I don't know if you notice that. It's very interesting. Why did these monks and nuns stop when I want to talk to them? And then, when we stop talking, they start walking again, and then you start talking to them and they stop again. That is our practice, because we want to give all of our attention to the listening. And if we just continue walking while we listen, we can neither give all of our attention to our walking or all of our attention to our listening. So our deep aspiration to practice allows us to cultivate that habit of stopping and listening 100%. And then when the talking has stopped, then we can continue to walk. And so if you keep talking to us, maybe we will never arrive at the monk's residence. That is because of our deep aspiration to practice, this deep desire. And the second is determination, adimoksha. So it's not enough just to have the desire to practice. We need to have the determination. We have to buy the ticket to come to Plum Village. But even that is not enough. Without determination, we do not stop when we're listening to somebody talking. We can desire to be a great mindfulness practitioner who shares mindfulness with everyone in the world. But if we don't have the determination to practice ourselves, what is the use of our talking about mindfulness? So adimoksha, determination, is what actually gets us to practice. There's a sense of urgency. Even in the Buddha's time, he said, the world is burning. The eyes are burning, the ears are burning, the nose is burning. All of our senses are burning. If we don't bring mindfulness to what is coming in through our eyes, our ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, we risk being completely engulfed by the flames of sense impressions. And he shared in that way to touch the determination of those monks. He wanted to encourage them to practice. This is real. This is an urgent situation. We don't know if we will live in the next minute. We don't know what will happen in the future. So use this moment wisely. Make the determination to practice. Yesterday we had a question about what can we do to address the situation of the climate. When we think about climate change, it can touch a lot of fear. It seems like everything that we know to be stable and solid, the very climate of the earth itself that our ancestors have enjoyed for thousands of generations, is changing more rapidly than we've ever experienced. And Tai shared with us that the human species may disappear off the planet Earth. That may happen. But can we look at that situation? Can we really look at that situation with the eyes of non-self? This body is not me. I am not limited by this body. Many species have come to be on the planet Earth. Some of them, many of them are our ancestors. Many of them are no longer here in the same form. We can see the record written in the bones in the earth. We don't need to read about it in a book. We just look at the earth and the earth can tell us something about their presence. And we know also that we will die, all of us, at some point. But now it seems for the first time as a human species we are reckoning with the possibility that we as human beings and other species as well may not continue on this planet. And that can bring up a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. In my practice, I look at this body as not me. And in seeing that, I see that also the earth is not me. And I see that when I have a stomach ache, when I feel some pain, I bring up the seed of mindfulness in my mind consciousness to be aware of that pain, of that suffering, to shine light on it. Because I know that things arise due to causes and conditions. And when there is a pain in the body, when there is some imbalance, if I allow the seed of mindfulness to manifest as a flower in mind consciousness, I can get an insight into that pain. And so if this body is not me, this body is not separate from Mother Earth, then I know that I can do the same for the earth. As long as I continue to see that this body is separate from the earth, there's no possibility for me to understand what is going on with the climate, with Mother Earth. But if I allow myself to be free of the limitations I impose on myself, that the end of my fingertips is the end of this body. That is an idea. But that this body is actually part of a larger organism. Thai like to talk about termites. When you have just 3 or 4 termites, how many of you have seen a termite mound? Maybe in South America or in Africa? If you just have 3 or 4 termites there with a little bit of dirt, they just kind of run around, they don't do much. But when you have many termites, somehow an intelligence seems to manifest. And they start to build columns only up to a certain height. And then they build another column and they join them together. And you start to build these columns and the mound starts to take shape. Many hundreds of thousands of termites. So somehow one termite alone cannot do it. They just run around like this. But when they start to come together, a kind of awakening happens, kind of intelligence, a capacity to act beyond just an individual. So what if we are able to help one another to wake up to this situation? That is a premise of Plum Village. We call collective awakening. I can tell you to become a vegan. I can tell you to stop flying in airplanes. But what if you woke up to an understanding on your own? What if you are part of the nervous system of Mother Earth and you can sense directly what you need to do? What if we all were able to let go of our craving, embrace our anger, transform all of our conflicts between our brothers and sisters, our family, our wife, our children? What if we are able to embrace that with mindfulness, to an extent that we can actually receive the message that is coming to us from the flowers, from the insects, from the trees. We don't convince anyone with ideology. We want everyone to wake up, to see for yourself what to do. Nobody is standing there directing the termites, saying, build the column, and then there's a foreman who's screaming, no, stop building that column there, and you have to build it over here. Somehow the insight is arising in the intelligence of the community. So these next 3 particular mental formations are key to this awakening. They are already on the logo of Plum Village. Mindfulness, concentration, and insight. We become aware of what is going on in our mind. And our mind is not just an individual matter. It has an individual aspect when we become angry, as in we experience anger. But that anger is connected to the collective consciousness. Right now, many of us are experiencing a lot of peace and happiness, maybe a little bit sweaty and hot. That is a collective consciousness we are sharing. One of the harmonies of living in community is to physically be together. So by being together, we are creating harmony. And we can be aware of what's going on in the other person. When anger is manifesting in the other person, we can learn how to recognize it. And we see that their mind consciousness is not separate from our mind consciousness. In the same way, the fear we experience with climate change is not just an individual fear. It is a collective fear. And so all of us here in Plum Village, we know how to handle our fear, and we can help others to take care of their fear. Even when people yell at us and say, "Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you angry about the situation in the climate?" And we can smile and say, there is anger. I am angry about this. I do experience fear. But I'm taking care of my anger. I'm taking care of my fear. Because I know when I am skillful in taking care of my anger and my fear, then I can act in a way that I truly am a steward of Mother Earth. Just like I am a steward of this, my own body and mind. I want to live in harmony with the earth. But I know that one ideology will never be enough to solve the problem of climate change. Will never be enough to bring the climate into balance. If I'm not in balance in myself, how could I ever expect to bring balance to the earth? And I look deeply every day with the eyes of non-self, to see that this body is not me. In order to be able to see that Mother Earth is also not me, that we are not separate, and that the imbalance inside of me is not separated from the imbalance in Mother Earth, the imbalance in the climate. That is my practice. And I know that if the feeling of fear and anger overwhelms me, I will not be able to see that situation. So it is because I want to see clearly how serious the situation of suffering is, that I'm taking care of my fear, that I'm taking care of my anger. It's because I want to act in a way that can bring peace and happiness to this situation. That is the way we can respond. That is the way we can practice. And don't think that you're not already acting. Someone may tell you, why don't you act? Why do you just sit there? In Plum Village we often say, usually people say, don't just sit there, act, right? In Plum Village we say, don't just act, sit there. Actually, action is happening all the time, through our thinking, through our speech, through our body. It's only an idea, we only have an idea of being passive, as opposed to active. We're always acting. This, sitting here in this talk, practicing together, that is creating a collective energy. That is a kind of action already happening in our mind. And then with determination, with mindfulness, and we maintain that mindfulness with our concentration, we get the insight what to do. We see we are not separate from Mother Earth, that Mother Earth is in the process of solving the imbalance, bringing balance back. She is always trying to bring the balance back. And maybe it is our way of thinking that is actually the obstacle. So that is the way of Plum Village. We call right view. Right view is the abandonment of all views. We don't let any idea or concept rule our mind or body. So that we give truth a chance to penetrate deeply. We penetrate reality in a direct way, no longer clouded by our perceptions. We're always bringing our body back into balance, seeing where the perceptions are not just a rough estimate, and helping them to become more true, become more real. And that can bring harmony into our family. When we sit down and we practice beginning anew, when maybe our son or daughter reminds us, they go into the breathing room and they invite a bell. We stop whatever we're doing. And we look deeply into our mind. We see what anger might be there, what fear might be manifesting through our speech, through our bodily action. Because the children know, they know fear, they know anger, but they don't have all the clever words that we have. They don't feel like they can express it. So by inviting just one sound of the bell, everyone stops and comes back to their breathing. And then suddenly we have a chance to correct our wrong perceptions, come back to the present moment. We make the determination to bring mindfulness up, the concentration, seeing that this body is not me. and we get insight, and we know what to do. We see how to bring the situation back into balance. And that insight will not be the same in every moment. That insight is for each of us to see for ourselves. That is true freedom. And Mother Earth is there for us. She wants us to be free. She's hoping that we're going to get it. And I deeply feel that there is our hope. That collective awakening is possible with the practice of understanding our mind. So thank you for bringing your families here. Thank you for bringing your children here. They are a great teacher of right view. They are not caught by concepts and words. And they can help us to see Mother Earth inside of us. Thank you for your practice, and I wish you a wonderful trip home. And I hope that you create with your practice a mindfulness practice center, a little plum village in your home, in your communities and in your towns, so we can help to heal Mother Earth.